Friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today's video is going to be featuring a modern day Tarocco Bolognese tournament deck. I've chosen this because it kind of reflects or harkens back to one of the oldest traditions of tarot in Italy, and their sequencing is a little different. And some of their imagery is a little different, and some of their cast of characters are a little different. And so I thought it would be a very interesting deck to focus on today. Before I get involved, I'd like to ask you if you, because I keep forgetting, if you appreciate my videos, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you don't already. If you aren't already subscribed, and please share my videos. Share the link to my videos. And to my YouTube channel with your friends. It's very competitive in this field to be noticed, especially if you have something worthwhile to say. There's a lot of people who are involved in tarot and tarot history, and I appreciate it if you can help me gain some notoriety in this field. Okay, so let's start with the Fool card. Now, traditionally in all decks, the Fool is not numbered, so it's not unusual that he has no number here. In many decks, in Italian decks, and I've pointed this out in other videos, the Fool often is engaged in some kind of noise-making activity. We see it in the Solabusca and maybe in the Minchiati or Metelli, I'm not sure which one it is, or maybe both, where there's music, or noise that's coming from the Fool. He has what appears to be the traditional feathers, although they do kind of look like leaves, but we don't usually see blue leaves, so maybe it is the traditional feathers coming out of the Fool's head. He's like a one-man band. He's traveling, he's on his own. Maybe not that this is why he was created to look this way, but one way to remember him as the Fool is he steps to the beat of a different drum, right? The next card in their sequencing is the what we call the Magician. Now, we don't have a whole lot of clues in this card, whether he's indoor or outdoor. And at some point in tournament play, the cards became reversible. The Bolognese, I think, did a better job than some of the other decks in creating the reversal so that you can really tell what the card is that you're looking at. But we do have someone who's involved in some type of shell game. So it's like a sleight of hand. These either are his assistants or the audience, part of the audience. And around 1725, the Bolognese kind of got pressure from the Pope, who had, I guess, a lot of weight in that region. And they decided that it was a lot easier to deal with life if they removed cards from the female Pope, the Empress, the Emperor, and the Pope, and replaced them with what the Pope suggested, with like the Four Moors. And this tradition never died after it was established in 1725. Now, the Four Moors represented people that were from outside of Italy, different regions of the world, so they had no political clout, there was no political pressure, there was no political correctness about these guys, because the emperor and the Pope, were probably always contending for who had more power. And even though the Pope had the number 5 position, that wouldn't have made the emperor happy in being in number 4 position. And even in some regions where these 4 cards were given the same value as far as points at the end of the game, counting up their points, the fact remains that the emperor was still below the Pope, So it's really a logical solution to replace that stretch of 4 cards. And other countries did it also. In Switzerland, they replaced Juno and they replaced the female pope and the pope with Juno and Jupiter. And and then the Belgian decks, they had the Spanish captain and Bacchus for 2 and 5. So the love card, concept of love, is number 5, not 6, as we're used to seeing. And although it does seem to be a suggestion of romantic love, it could be the concept of love in general as being a commitment to another person, because it does look like either a wedding or betrothal or something like that, a commitment, a promise made between two people. Number 6, we have the Chariot, Temperance, Justice, Fortitude. Now let's take a look at these 3 cards. The 4 cardinal virtues of the Catholic faith are temperance, justice, fortitude, and prudence. But in this deck and in other, especially the deck of TDM that we're accustomed to seeing now, there is no card called prudence. So what happened? Why did the 4th, cardinal virtue, which was a tenet of, Catholicism, why didn't it appear on the deck? Now, I don't know if this is fact, but this is just me connecting some dots, and I connect a lot of dots because I have a lot of decks and I can look at a lot of them, and come up with conclusions. And it seems that, the reason why there's 3 instead of the 4 virtues is because maybe they weren't adhering so much to the the doctrine of the Catholic Church, but they were maybe more, becoming more secular, right? They were adhering to a more secular line of thought, in which case the Pythagorean philosophy would have made a lot of sense that these cards were based on, because the Pythagorean philosophy, a humanist philosophy, had great appeal, and people of medieval and Renaissance Italy were aware of Pythagorean philosophy, and the 3 key features or virtues of Pythagorean philosophy were these 3. So it would explain why a 4th one was missing, because maybe it wasn't based on the Catholic virtues, but on the Pythagorean virtues. And furthermore, it kind of makes sense because the deck already seems like it's a bit secular, in replacing these 4 cards with, non-religious, right? Non-religious people. It kind of already puts us in a more secular reference. Now, it's weird. I'm going to pause this a second because in the order that the cards came, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, love should have been number 6. So I'm going to pause and come back and see if I can explain that. Nope, I can't explain it because unfortunately the booklet is written in Italian and I just don't grasp Italian. So I don't know. But if I find out why love is number 5, I'll let it be. I'll explain it down below. It could be that these are not in the right order. They aren't numbered. So it may have been that, these 5 cards would have been in a different order. And I just put them in this order because I didn't know any better. Okay. So we have number 5, love, the concept of love. The Chariot, number 6. A Victor's card. These guys, we already discussed. And the Wheel of Fortune, which I think in almost every deck is 10, but there have been some differences. I forget. I think maybe the Rosenwald or maybe the Budapest, may have had a different number for number 10. And then we come to the old man. Now, in Italian, he's referenced as El Vecchio, which means the old man. Another interesting thing is the remnant of wings. Now, traditionally and frequently, when we see wings on a tarot deck, we can identify that individual as a virtue or a virtuous person. So we have an old man with wings, and he's called the Old One. Now, it could be understood that years and experience brings wisdom, and it's possible that this is the fourth cardinal virtue of the Catholic Church. Now, it is separated from the other three by the Wheel of Fortune, which could just be, I don't know what happened, it could just be a mistake in sequencing or whatever. Maybe it was very specific. If it is the fourth cardinal virtue, why it is separated from the other three. The other three don't have wings, and he is the only one who does. But as, art is, repeated through the centuries in a game of cards, who knows, why certain things stick and why certain things don't stick. And it's entirely possible that he didn't represent a fourth cardinal virtue of the Catholic Church. Or maybe they wanted to distance themselves from that. So they put the three, Pythagorean virtues together and separated it by, from the fourth with the Wheel of Fortune. And just, he appears here. I don't know. I don't know what the reason was, if they were trying to distance themselves from the Catholic tenets or not. Certainly the Pythagorean philosophy was a thing. It was something that, medieval and Renaissance people knew about. And it was probably something they embraced too, because the tenets of Pythagorean philosophy, being a humanist thing, kind of, I don't want to use the word preached, but they kind of extolled the virtues of a virtuous life, right? Of living a good life and a virtuous life in preparation for your rebirth in another body. Whereas, the Catholic doctrine was, fire and brimstone if you didn't behave. You had two choices. You had heaven or hell. So I don't know. But I think it's interesting that the Bolognese deck, and this is just my 2 cents, seems to be more of a secular deck than, maybe it separated itself from what was happening elsewhere in Italy, to be more politically correct. And that might have appealed to other countries besides France, who did seem to adhere to a religious kind of theme, like in Belgium and Switzerland, where the decks, had other cards that were in keeping with, I think the Belgian, maybe not so much the Swiss, but I will get to that when we get to the eternal cards. So here we have 12, the Hanged Man, who in Italy, it would have been the Hanged Man, and the Italians knew that this was a hanged man. The card itself is known as the traitor. Traitors, this was the punishment for being a traitor, was being hung by one foot. Now, a lot has been spoken about this card, that it was never intended to be the hanged man, and it was really just somebody who's walking, and the rope that appeared was a snake, and this is the posture he took, upon being surprised by a snake during his walk, right? And they proposed, the occultists, that this card represented prudence. Now, I know I read it somewhere, and I have forgotten because it never gelled in my brain as making any sense. But the occultists didn't even see the Old One as possibly being representative of prudence, right? Because prudence and wisdom would have been kind of the same concept. So they didn't go there, they went here. But the Italians, definitely, there's no mistaking it. The source of this image in Italy was the hanged man. And, maybe in Vieilleville, when it was created, the Vieilleville was created in Paris, maybe there was some confusion, and whoever printed the deck, printed them upside down, and then, when it went off to, Belgium, then they perpetuated the mistake of creating him standing rather than upside down. I don't know. But this is just my own 2 cents. I think, he was always a hanged man. That's what he was. And, any other occasion where he's standing upright was really, a misunderstanding. So we have death, which is consistently number 13. He's on a white horse with a scythe. And then we have references to damnation. And then eternity, beginning with the star card. Now these cards here are in keeping with what we see in Belgium. And in the, some of the earliest decks, like the Estensi or the Charles VI, and also, the Visconti Sforza over there, we see these cards represented by the concept of a star, a moon, and the sun. Somewhere, the French style became the more popular. Now, I don't know if the Italians came up with that version and the French copied it, but, the Italian version got lost, and the only credit we can give is to the French, because that's the earliest appearance of, of the Aquarius for the star, and the crayfish or lobster for the moon, and, the children in a walled courtyard for the sun. It's just possible that, it's just the concept of the star, the moon, and the sun needed to be portrayed, and however you felt like portraying it was legit, as long as you portrayed the star, the moon, and the sun. But here we have the star represented by what appears to be the 3 wise men, the moon by astrologers, who in their day would have been the astronomers of their day. I mean, he has the instrument, a caliper, for measuring maybe distance. And then we have the sun, depicted by a woman spinning thread. Maybe this was, an activity that had to be done during the day. Now, I know I've seen her image on the moon card. And I think when it, and that might have been another anomaly that was made at some point, switching up the moon and the sun with this woman. It may have originally been that woman, the woman was associated with the moon because of her cycles, and then this activity of thread spinning was a woman's task, and so it was associated with the woman. So I don't know which came first, the moon card with this spinning of the thread, or the sun card. I don't know. And why this sequence? Well, when you look up in the night sky, the star is the smallest. The moon is the next to largest that you see, and it's depicted here in that way. And then the sun would be the largest that you see, that occupies the sky in bigger proportions than the distant stars and the distant stars and the moon. And also the sun is known to be life-giving, life-sustaining for us. So it would have been the most important. And we have a very secular world, which in the Bologna deck comes before the last card, in which in their case is the angel or the judgment card that we call it. Now, in the Sforza deck, the Visconti Sforza deck, as well as in the Charles VI or the Estensi deck, whatever you want to call it, both of those world cards are individuals represented like standing on the world, right? We don't see the image that has come down in the TDM deck of what appears to have been originally the ascended Christ and the mandala, right? The mandala, and then the 4 evangelical creatures, and one of each of the 4 creatures in the corners. So this card really is, very secular, right? An individual on top of his world, probably a reference to Mercury. Yep, Mercury, which again would have been a much more secular humanist thing than, the religious associations. And then we have the judgment card, or they call it the angel card, which in tournament play of modern days is the last card and the most powerful card in the Trump order. And we don't see people rising from the dead, being called to atone for or account for their sins or anything like that. It's just a reminder that at some point we're going to be called upon to account for our behaviors on earth. And I guess, that is in keeping with both the Pythagorean philosophy of, experiencing trials and tribulations of, power struggles, right? Power struggles here. And then, love and victory and, virtues, right? Fate, wisdom and experience. Again, like another card that kind of reminds us of consequences for behaviors. And then, death surely follows us, and maybe there's a period of adjustment of where do we go? I mean, the concept of purgatory, I don't think existed in, medieval and Renaissance days. So it's like if you didn't live right, you went to hell, there was not a whole lot of, options there. But the Pythagorean philosophy was that you wanted to live a good and virtuous life because you would be recreated in the form of another body. And maybe that body was determined by how virtuous a life you lived, right? So at least the Pythagorean philosophy offered, hope that, well, maybe you won't come back as a human next time, but, maybe you'll come back as a horse, and that's not so bad sometimes, right? It's better than being a cockroach, right? So, at any rate, that is the spread of trump cards in the Bolognese deck. Now, I can show you the pip cards for those of you who are interested. It is an abbreviated deck. There's not 78 cards in the Bolognese Tarocco. Each suit begins with the ace. This is the ace of coins. And then we have the 6 through 10 of each suit. And they're kind of reminiscent of, like domino cards. Well, they don't go up past 6, I guess. But they kind of, like the 2 4s. Well, just the 2 4s, I guess. And then we have the 4 court cards. Then the suit of swords, we have the ace, again, the 6 through 10. Notice that the odd numbered swords face down. So the 7 and 9 face down, and the 10, which has 2 additional, one faces down and the other one is transverse. Okay, and then we have the 4 court cards. Only the knight has a scimitar. And then we have the suit of cups, again, the ace, the 6, the 7, 8, 9, 10, and then the 4 court cards. And notice that there is no cloth that covers the cup in the page of cups. He does in the tournament style Piedmontese deck, which is interesting, but not here. And then batons, ace, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then the 4 court cards. Now this deck also had 2 cards at the end, the black and red fool. They're named the Fool. I don't know how they play. I know there's a game where there's a black fool and a red fool, which is what I guess these 2 cards would, be used for. But then how do we reconcile what this card's used for? So is this card, and if anybody plays, Bolognese tournament style game, do they use this Fool card in addition to these two? Or if they play a game, you know, a version of the game with these two, do they take him out? Or do they play a version with him and take these cards out? Or do they play with all three fools? So I don't know. And maybe where did he appear? Where did he appear? Now, when the deck arrived to me, I noticed that they were not in any real order. So I took the liberty of putting them in the order that they came to me in the deck, which was sealed. So the first card was World, followed by Sun, Moon. So it looked like initially that it was going in reverse order. And then we had the Fool, which was the drummer guy, right? And then the Magician, the Lover, Chariot, Temperance, Justice, Fortitude. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so this was the order it came in. And if this is the correct order, Lover would still be number 6 and not number 5, right? So I don't know. I don't know what to say. You know, this is the order the cards came in. I, you know, put them in the order that I thought that they should have been in, you know, around the numbered ones. You know, I did my best to put them in the order that I thought they would have been in. I know the Eternity cards would have been together, and I know it would have been in this order, you know, 16, 17, 18. I knew that the World card came before Justice, so for me, the only place that it made sense to put the early numbered cards was in the way I did them, but it still just doesn't make sense why the Lover card is 5 and not 6, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This should be 6. So if somebody can explain it to me, I'd appreciate it. Until next time, friends, peace and stay well.